Hi class, this is Mr. Davidian and I'm going to give you a review on what we covered week 2 and 3 in our AP language class at Tuckwitz High School. Now week 2, day 1, I start off very enthusiastically describing what an argument is and what is communication. Now obviously it starts with an author that has an idea who anticipates, see if I can draw a dotted line here, what his audience needs to hear and what strategies they may require to be persuaded. And so then he encodes his message with a specific style and strategies in mind, hoping that his audience will be persuaded to believe him and understand him, and um, they would be persuaded to do what he wants them to do. So he encodes the message with those strategies or details or devices. They decode it, and obviously, when they decode it, they hopefully will get the picture that he intended, and somebody sometimes will get the opposite or get a different perspective. However, most people will understand what he's saying. So for us, we try to analyze the choices the author makes so that we can try to get the idea that that he intended for his audience. And then obviously we can analyze the context, whether we're a part of the context or not. Maybe this context has an influence on why he made this message, or why they needed to hear this message, or how they would probably interpret it. So that's a summary of the first day. Here, just like an author has to strategically do something in his argument so they can get a certain effect by the audience, these are some synonyms for the word strategic. So students wrote these down into their notebook. Then students were required to make an advertisement. Just like any other person who's given a famous speech, they had to anticipate what message their audience or what product their audience needed, um, what type of techniques will persuade an audience to buy their product or listen to the message, use those techniques, and make an advertisement. And so then we took a bunch of pictures of them and put them on a TV for everyone to see. So kids had to be strategic in their planning and making their advertisement or an invitation. Homework was to analyze Abraham Lincoln's persuasive speech at his second inaugural address. So then when students arrived on Tuesday, we looked at their annotations, and we really looked at obviously their ability to really look at every detail, every important detail. And then obviously if it's super important, we can super circle it. If it's kind of important, we just circle it, or we can just underline it if it's okay. Then we really highlight or maybe add some words on the sides. If we see commonality, we can use maybe red, for pathos. Hey, red, or maybe blue for ethos, and green for logos. Try to use different strategies to organize your thoughts. As you can see here, these thoughts are looking crazy. For homework, students were asked to look at the multiple choice questions on the back of the page, using specific strategies to cross out answers that were not correct, not crossing out everything, but maybe leaving one or two left, and then analyzing, going back to the text to see which one was the best, and then circle the best one. So make sure you're using mark the text strategies. Next up, we had students write down effects verbs in their notebook. This way they have a more substantial amount of words they can use, a lot of more synonyms they can use, so their writing is not too robotic. It's very creative and stylistic, intuitive, um, and so there's a bunch of different synonyms you can use for your 7 categories. Then we looked at the answers to the multiple choice questions, which I think these are the answers. I don't have the official answers, so take a look at those answers. Make sure you cross in all answers. Okay, one of my favorite lessons is that when you're talking about what authors say, when you give a concrete detail or a quote, then you can add an explanation. Now, some teachers ask you to write the explanation in a separate sentence by putting a period. However, I try to teach students that it's okay to put your explanation in the same sentence using effects verbs, like that. And you can call this a commentary, an explanation, elaboration, whatever you want to call it, but usually it follows the concrete detail or quotes. Now, another cool trick that I try to teach students is that sometimes you can swap it. Sometimes you can put the explanation first, followed by the concrete detail or quote. He emphasizes love by repeating the phrase forever. So here in this sample paragraph, we have a sample introductory paragraph with the hook here, and then we organize the essay into 3 different topics. We have descriptive imagery, parallel structure, and encouraging allusions. Then we have obviously our brainstorm of these particular topics. And then obviously this is going to be body paragraph 2, or this is going to be paragraph 2, 3, and 4. I always tell my students, do not lie to your reader. If you tell them you're going to talk about this, then talk about it. If you tell them you're going to talk about this, then please do so, and this as well. However, sometimes by the time students get to paragraph 4, maybe there's other things that they want to talk about. Maybe they totally forgot about all of this stuff. They just jumped into 4 too soon, and all of a sudden they get to their last paragraph, they forget what to say. Either way, your job is to not lie to your reader. If, let's say, all of a sudden you want to change this and you want to call it something else, or you're going to talk about something else, maybe in paragraph 3, then go back to your thesis and change it in your thesis so that your thesis matches the rest of your essay. All right? Okay, so let's get into how we write. Okay, so let's get into how we write. Obviously, we talked about using quotes and then using effects verbs to explain the quotes, as you can see here. But if you notice down here, we put the effects verb first, which means this one starts with the concrete detail or quote, followed by the explanation. Here's the quote, followed by the explanation. But here we have the explanation followed by quotes afterward. And so that's another strategy to mix it up so you're not so robotic, not so formulaic in your writing, having a little bit of creativity and flexibility and freedom to really have your own voice. So keep that in mind. Number 2, notice that we quote quickly. We don't have to write one sentence for this quote and then one sentence for this quote. You can actually write multiple quotes into one sentence so that you don't have to write so much. Try to say the most that you can in the fewest amount of words. Okay, so as you can see here on paragraph 3, we have our topic sentence, now talking about parallel structure. And the notes are on the side here for my students. So we begin saying by pointing out that all dreaded it, all sought to avert it, and how both parties deprecated war, comma, Lincoln honorably shows. So here we have our quotes and then our explanation. Next concrete detail. In the same way, he respectfully states that neither, and neither did this. Now notice that I don't have a big fat explanation right after these quotes. I jump right into the next the next set of quotes. So where's my explanation? It's right here. By using certain adjectives and adverbs, I can kind of imply what I think the author's intent was very, very quickly. So you don't always have to have a lot of quotes and a big explanation. You can mix it up. So we're trying to get by with just using a one-word explanation, but don't always do that. But when you have a lot to say, you got to just say it quickly. So try that when you have to do that. Furthermore, Lincoln positively recognizes, and then obviously we have all of our quotes here. Again, I have my quick explanation here. Then I get into this last one, which is he blames the cause of the war on the South. Notice how many times I quote here. 1, 2, oh, only 2. Oh, wait, 3, and 4 quotes in 2 sentences. And obviously I have my effects verbs. He uses statistics to clarify the situation. He gives preference to the North and gently justifying. So I have a bunch of different explanations here. So I kind of finish off with a lot of explanation here because up here I didn't have a lot. So, and then we have our final explanation down here. So in paragraph 4, you'll notice the same thing. We have our effects verbs, effects verbs, effects verbs, and effects verbs. You'll notice here that I have a quote and the effect. A quote and the effect. Here I just have the quote, actually a lot of quotes. I have a lot of quotes here. So obviously I had to put a period. And then I put my explanation right underneath. Simply put, Lincoln uses scriptural authority to justify fighting the war. And then, of course, I have my last one. So we have a lot of different quotes and explanations to really make our explication truly thorough. All right. So we don't have a concluding paragraph, but if we have a really nice conclusion, if we added more to this, then we can just kind of finish this off. So let's look at some sample essays. So here on these specific AP sample essays from the 2002 AP test, students were required to analyze Abraham Lincoln's second inaugural address. So out of these three, which one was a 9, which one was a 7, and which one was the 5? Obviously, this one was the 5, and this one was the 7, and this one was the 9? Yes. Sample D was a 9, obviously, because like we did, we used a lot of quotes and a lot of explanations and effects verbs. These ones, not so much, and this one was very too general. They probably didn't use enough quotes and probably not enough effects verbs. They probably had a lot of their own opinions in here. Either way, let's look at the 9. You'll notice, obviously, they break it down into 3 different categories like we did, but notice they do something a little cooler. They add a fat explanation of what each actually did. So this is very, very good. This sets them apart from other AP students. And I always tell my students, hey, your job is to be different than other AP students. If you think AP students are going to talk about, a few things, then why don't you talk about something different? Why don't you look at it from a different point of view or different points of view, a variety of points of view. As you can see here, the student adds the explanation after each one. Very, very good thoroughness. Let's get into paragraph 2 and 3. You'll notice they're quoting quickly because I circled the ellipses here. Obviously, they quote a lot here, and then they explain in the next sentence. This obviously paints the South as the aggressors, instead has a North sharing responsibility and reinforces this and emphasizes that, and this reflects this and applies this and shows this and encourages this. This person is really giving a lot of explanation of what the author strategically and purposefully and deliberately and intentionally was doing for their audience. So, and that's the thing too, is make sure you mention the audience. You have to mention the audience. And so let's keep going. Oh, there's another one. Paragraph 4 and 5. Oops, I didn't do it. He tries to personify both the war and the nation as the enemy, the latter as a beaten, needy friend. This begins the end of paragraph 2, where Lincoln says one side, here's his bunch of quotes. The first quote paints. The second one shows. These personifications become stronger in the third and fourth paragraph. Why? You gotta say why. He states it, again, painting it as an independent creature with its own actions and desires. Further, he expresses hope that it would pass away, granting that the same character of morality gave the world nation. Lincoln sums up his personification of the nation by urging others to bind up the nation's wounds. Again, he shows the nation as wounded in need of help. So, very, very good. They're quoting and explaining with high-level thoughts and insights. Obviously, they have a quick little conclusion here, talking about why the author wrote to mend this and to appeal to this and all that good stuff. So the author did really well. Here's a quick explanation of how the AP scored this 9 and what they actually said.